Um, Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got a really massive stack of notes today. Transcripts, seminar recordings,
W-
the works.
We really do. It's a lot of material to get through.
Yeah. And honestly, looking at who we're covering today, it feels a bit like we're looking at the source code for the entire self-help industry.
Source code is actually a perfect way to put it because, I mean, you look at Tony Robbins or you look at the modern productivity gurus, the mindset
Oh, yeah,
coaches,
all of them.
yeah, all of them. If you trace their lineage back, almost all roads lead to Jim Rohn. He was the mentor to the masters.
He really was.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, and I want to be upfront about this with you listening because I was a little skeptical going in.
Yeah.
Usually when we do a deep dive on a motivational speaker, I brace myself for a lot of hype.
The whole visualize the Ferrari thing.
Exactly.
Deck.
Yeah, the visualize the Ferrari, believe in yourself, you can do it kind of stuff. But Ron feels, I don't know, he feels different. Less like a cheerleader and more like a grandfather who just isn't afraid to tell you that you're messing up.
That is the Ron signature right there.
Yeah.
He wasn't about the hype at all. He was really a philosopher of fundamentals.
Right.
He believed that successful living wasn't some mystery or a magic trick. It's just the natural consequence of doing very specific and honestly often boring things consistently.
So let's get right into the core thesis here because it completely flips the way most of us operate.
Mm.
I mean, we usually think of success as something we have to go out and chase down. We hunt for the better job. We chase the higher salary.
We pursue it
Right. We pursue it. But Ron says that's backward.
entirely backward. His central premise, and this anchors everything we're going to talk about today, is that success is not to be pursued. It is to be attracted by the person you become.
Okay, let's pause there for a second. Attracted by the person you become. It sounds really poetic, but what does that actually mean in practice?
Hey.
Because if I just sit on my couch and work on, becoming a better person, my rent still isn't going to pay itself. It sounds a little passive, doesn't it?
It definitely sounds passive if you interpret becoming as just sitting there thinking happy thoughts, but that's not it at all. Ron meant becoming in terms of value and skill acquisition.
Anyway.
Think of it this way. If you chase a butterfly, which was his favorite metaphor for success, it just flies away. But if you build a beautiful garden, the butterflies come to you.
So the garden is
Yeah.
what exactly?
The garden is your skill set. It's your discipline, your personality, your leadership ability, all of that. So if you aren't attracting the success you want right now, the problem isn't that you aren't chasing hard enough. It's that you aren't the kind of person that success is naturally drawn to yet.
Ah, I see. So it's a massive shift from I need to find a better opportunity to I need to be the person who is ready for a better opportunity.
Exactly. And this leads to what is probably the hardest pill to swallow in his entire philosophy, because we all have a list of things we wish were different, right?
Oh, absolutely. The economy is bad, taxes are too high, my boss is a complete nightmare.
Right? We all have that list. And Ron's response to that list is famous. He says, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better, don't wish for fewer problems, wish for more skills.
See, that's where the tough love comes in. It's almost frustrating to hear. Because if someone is drowning in debt or dealing with a health crisis, telling them to just wish for more skills feels a bit cold.
And it can feel very cold, sure. But look at the alternative. If you just wish for the world to change, you are waiting on variables you cannot control.
Yeah, you're stuck.
You're handing your agency entirely over to the government or the economy or your employer. By saying, wish you were better, Ron is actually handing the power back to you.
That makes sense.
He's saying, look, the world is going to be hard. Winter is coming. You can't stop the winter from arriving, but you can get stronger so the cold doesn't kill you.
It's the difference between hoping for good weather and actually building a better house.
That's exactly it. And that brings us to his whole concept of value in the marketplace. This is so crucial for anyone listening who feels underpaid right now. Ron says we don't get paid for the hour. We get paid for the value we bring to the hour.
I've heard this before, but I really want to push on it a bit. Because in a lot of jobs, you literally are paid by the hour. If I work at a coffee shop, I get paid for 60 minutes of standing behind the counter.
You do, but you actually get paid for the value that can be produced in that 60 minutes. That's why the person flipping burgers gets one wage and the CEO of the burger company gets another.
Right, because of the impact.
Yes, it's not about who works harder physically. It's about how hard it is to replace the value that specific person provides.
So if I want to earn more running, I can't just walk in and demand more money for the exact same hour. I have to figure out how to make my hour worth more.
Precisely. You have to become more valuable. And this is where his most famous line on education comes in. He says, formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune.
Which is a fantastic bumper sticker, by the way. But let's unpack the self-education part. Because he's not just talking about going home and teaching yourself to code, is he?
No, not just technical skills. He's talking about the lifelong study of how the world actually works. Economics, philosophy, human behavior. Formal education teaches you how to fit into the system. It teaches you to be a cog.
Right, to get the degree and get the job.
Exactly. But self-education teaches you how the system works so you can leverage it. Rohn argues that you should constantly be doing this. You should work harder on yourself than you do on your job.
That is a radical idea for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because if you're exhausted by your job, the absolute last thing you want to do is come home and do more work on yourself.
It is exhausting. But the alternative is stagnation.
Right.
Rohn uses a sailing metaphor here, which I think is one of his best mental models. He says the exact same wind blows on us all.
The economy, the politics.
Yes, the wind of the economy, the wind of tragedy, the wind of opportunity. The wind itself is completely neutral.
So why do we all end up in completely different destinations if the wind is the exact same for everyone?
Because of the set of the sail. The set of the sail is your philosophy, your daily habits, your acquired skills. You cannot change the wind, but you can adjust your sail to use that wind to get where you want to go.
It totally eliminates the victim mentality.
It does. If you're not where you want to be, you don't get to blame the wind. You have to check your sails.
Okay, so let's say I buy into this. I'm ready to stop blaming the economy and I'm ready to set my sail. But I need a manual on how to actually set it. Ron has a few frameworks for this, and our roadmap today covers the big ones. The first one is, well, it's about ants.
The ant philosophy.
Yeah, the ant philosophy.
Yeah.
I have to be honest, when I saw that in the notes, I thought, okay, are we really going there? It feels a little kindergarten.
It sounds super simple, but it's actually a very tight mental model for resilience. Ron identified 4 specific things that ants do that most humans honestly fail at. First, they never quit.
Never quit.
Right. If you block an ant's path, it doesn't just stand there and complain about the rock in its way. It goes up, it goes down, it goes round. It immediately looks for a new route.
Whereas we tend to hit a roadblock and say, well, I guess that just wasn't meant to be.
Exactly. We just give up. Second rule, they think winter all summer. This is the big one. When food is everywhere and the sun is shining, the ant is working to gather. It knows the good times are temporary.
And humans.
When we get a bonus or the economy is booming, we spend like it's going to last forever. We just don't prepare for the cold.
Yeah. And then the reverse is also true, right?
Yeah. Yes. Rule 3 is they think summer all winter. When it's freezing and miserable, they don't give up hope. They know it's just the cycle. They stay ready to launch out of the nest the very moment the temperature rises.
So they stay positive.
Very positive. And finally, and this addresses your earlier question about how much effort is enough, rule 4 is they do all they can. How much does an ant gather during the summer? All it possibly can.
Not a quota.
Right, not a quota, not a minimum requirement, a maximum effort. All it possibly can.
All you can. That's actually a really frightening standard if you really apply it to yourself. Like, am I really doing all I can, or am I just doing enough to get by?
Most of us are just doing enough to not get fired, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which segues perfectly into Ron's broader framework on timing. The seasons of life. We touched on winter and summer with the ants just now, but he fleshes this out into a complete worldview, and he's not talking about the actual weather.
No, these are seasons of circumstance, and the biggest mistake people make is not realizing which season they are currently in. Let's start with winter. Winter is not an accident. Winter is inevitable. It's the difficulties, the recessions, the personal losses.
And his advice for winter isn't just wait it out in a bunker somewhere.
No, his advice is to get stronger. You cannot fake it in the winter. If you haven't built the character or the savings account, the winter will simply crush you. You have to use that harsh time to develop wisdom. Then comes spring.
Spring being opportunity.
Right, opportunity always follows winter. But here's the catch with spring, it is short. Ron says plant in the spring or beg in the fall.
Oh, wow. We often see an opportunity and we think, oh, I have plenty of time to think about it maybe next month. Ron says no. You have to hustle immediately when the window is open.
Then we get to summer. Now, in my head, summer is vacation time. It's relaxation, taking it easy. But Ron has a much darker take on summer.
He really does. He calls summer the season of protection. You've planted your seeds in the spring and now they're growing nicely. But you know what else grows really well in the summer?
Weeds.
Weeds and bugs. So summer isn't about sitting on the beach. It's about the battle.
So you have to protect what you've built.
Yes, it's about guarding your values. He says all good will be attacked. If you have a good marriage, it will be attacked by neglect or distraction. If you have a good business competition, we'll immediately attack it. If you sit back and relax in the summer, the weeds will take your garden.
And finally, the fall, the harvest season. The harvest is simply the truth revealing itself. If you didn't plant in the spring, or you didn't fight the weeds in the summer, you do not get to complain about an empty basket in the fall. You reap without complaint, and you take full responsibility for the crop.
It's a total framework for accountability.
Mm-hmm.
I am where I am because of what I did or didn't do in the previous season.
Exactly. No excuses.
Okay, so we have the mindset, the sale, and the timing, the seasons. But I want to get more granular now. Ron had a specific how-to guide for personal transformation. He called it the 5 abilities.
Right, the system.
Yeah, let's dig into these because looking at the list, some of them seem obvious at first glance, but I have a feeling Ron's take is completely different. The first one is the ability to absorb.
Yeah, most people think this just means paying attention in a meeting. But Ron frames it as extraction. He says, don't just get through the day, get from the day.
What's the fundamental difference there?
Getting through the day is just survival. You clock in, you clock out, and you go to sleep and forget it. Getting from the day means you treat every interaction, every meeting, every failure as raw data. You act like a sponge. You're constantly asking yourself, what did I just see? What worked today? What didn't work?
So you're essentially mining your own life for lessons.
Yes. Wherever you are, be there. Which naturally leads to the second, the ability to respond. This one is all about emotions. And this is fascinating because a lot of old school business advice is leave your emotions at the door. Be a robot.
Yeah, the whole stoicism thing, right? Keep a stiff upper lip, never let them see you sweat.
Right. But Ron completely disagreed with that. He believed you need to let life touch you. He said if you build a thick wall around yourself to keep out sadness, you also keep out joy. You diminish your capacity for it.
So you have to feel it all.
You have to educate your emotions, not suppress them. Emotions are the fuel. Logic sets the path, sure, but emotion provides the actual energy to walk down that path. If you don't care deeply, you won't work hard.
That makes total sense. Logic doesn't get you out of bed at 5 in the morning to work on a project, but passion does.
Correct. Now, the third ability is where we get very tactical. The ability to reflect. Ron says, gather up the past and invest it in the future.
And he had a very specific tool for doing this, right? The journal.
Oh, he was an absolute fanatic about journaling. But not the Dear Diary today, I ate a turkey sandwich kind of journaling. He meant using a journal as a serious analytical tool. He famously bought a completely blank book for $26.
Which was a lot of money for an empty notebook back then.
A huge amount. But he did it to force himself to find ideas worth $26 to put inside it. He said, never trust your memory.
I love that concept, putting a literal financial premium on your own thoughts.
Yep.
But how do you actually do this? Do you just sit down and stare at the wall and think?
He suggested a very specific rhythm. At the end of every day, take just a few minutes. Replay the tapes of the day. Who did you meet? What did you say? How did it feel? Then at the end of the week, take a few hours. Review the whole week. Then a half day at the end of the month.
Okay. And this is the massive one, a full weekend at the end of the year to review your journals from the entire year.
That sounds intense. Taking a whole weekend just reading your own notes.
It does, but think about the competitive advantage there. Most people live the exact same year 30 times, and they call it a life. They make the exact same mistakes over and over because they never actually stop to look at their own pattern.
Oh, wow.
By reviewing, you spot the patterns. You realize, hey, every time I hang out with this specific person, I feel terrible afterward. Or every time I start a project without an outline, it fails. It turns your raw experience into actionable insight.
It prevents you from sleepwalking through your life.
Yeah.
Okay, number 4, the ability to act.
This is where the rubber meets the road. Discipline. Ron talks about something called the law of diminishing intent.
I feel like I'm a victim of this law every single day. We all are. The law states that the time to act is when the idea is hot and the emotion is strong. If you have a great idea to write a book or call a client or start a new diet and you don't do something about it immediately, the intent starts to leak out.
It fades away.
Exactly. A week later, the passion is just gone. The idea is cold.
So you have to capitalize on that burst of energy while it's still there.
You have to drive the first stake in the ground, make the phone call right then, buy the domain name, do something physical that commits you to the action. He defined discipline as the bridge between goals and accomplishment.
And he talked about a ripple effect with discipline too, didn't he?
Yes. Every discipline affects every other discipline. If you walk around the block, you naturally want to eat better. If you eat better, you have the energy to read more. It all connects.
And the final ability in the framework, the ability to share.
This is the abundance mindset. Pouring out what you know makes room for more knowledge to come in, but practically speaking, teaching is just the best way to learn. Yeah. If I explain Ron's philosophy to you right now, I understand it much better than if I had just read it in a book alone. If you share an idea with 10 people, they hear it once, but you hear it 10 times. You solidify the knowledge in your own brain.
Okay, so we've covered the core philosophy, the resilience, mental models, the daily habits. But we really have to talk about money now. Ron did not shy away from wealth at all. In fact, he viewed financial independence almost as a moral obligation. And he had a very strict rule for it, the 70-30 rule.
He did. And before we even break down the math of it, we have to look at the mindset shift behind it. He said poor people spend money and invest what is left. Rich people invest their money and spend what is left.
That's the trap right there. Most of us get the paycheck, we pay the rent, buy the groceries, maybe go out for a nice dinner, and then look at the checking account and say, oh, well, there's nothing left to save this time. Maybe next month.
And next month simply never comes. Ron's rule is totally rigid to prevent that. You must learn to live on 70% of your net income.
I can hear people listening to us right now just screaming at their speakers, live on 70%. I can barely live on 100% in this economy.
And honestly, that is a completely valid reaction. But Ron would argue that it's not about the dollar amount, it's about the philosophy of allocation. Even if you only have one single dollar to your name, the discipline is the exact same. Take 70 cents for lifestyle.
Right.
If you can't do it with a single dollar, you certainly won't magically do it when you have $1 million.
So how does the remaining 30% break down? Because it's not just put it in a savings account.
No, and this is the really brilliant part of his financial plan. It's 3 distinct buckets of 10%. The first 10% goes to charity or giving.
Why start with giving, especially if you're broke and struggling?
Because it teaches your brain abundance. It actively breaks the mental grip of scarcity. If you give away 10 cents of your dollar, you are physically telling yourself, I have enough to spare. It builds character.
Okay, I like that. What's the second 10%?
Active capital. Ron calls this money for engaging in the marketplace. This isn't buying stocks. This is money you use to buy and sell.
Can you give me a modern example of that? What does active capital actually look like today?
Today, it's your side hustle fund. It's buying a lawnmower so you can mow lawns on the weekend for cash. It's buying vintage jackets at a thrift store to flip them on eBay for a profit.
Ah, okay.
It's money that requires your actual labor combined with that capital to produce a profit. It keeps you hungry and engaged in commerce.
And then the final 10% is passive capital.
Right. This is the wealth while you sleep bucket. Stocks, index funds, bonds. Money that you put away and absolutely do not touch, letting compound interest do all the heavy lifting for you over time.
So just to recap that, 70% for your lifestyle and necessities, 10% for charity, 10% to the active hustle, and 10% for the passive future.
That is the blueprint. And Ron warned that if you spend everything you make, you are essentially driving a car with no brakes. Eventually, you will crash.
We've covered so much internal work today. You know, the journaling, the emotional control, the personal finances. But Ron also put a massive emphasis on the external, specifically the people around us.
Yeah.
We've all heard that famous quote, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That was actually him, right?
That was him, yes. And he suggested you do a brutal audit of your social circle. He said you need to sit down and ask yourself 3 very hard questions. Who am I around? What are they doing to me? And is that okay?
What are they doing to me? And for the influence, right?
Influence. Are they making you cynical? Are they encouraging you to skip the gym? Are they complaining about the economy constantly every time you meet for coffee?
That it rubs off on you.
Because influence is really subtle. It's like a tiny nudge. If you get nudged off course just 1 degree every single day in 10 years, you're going to wake up in a completely different ocean.
But what do you do if the negative influence in your life is your brother or your coworker that you literally have to sit next to for 8 hours a day? You can't just fire your family.
No, you can't. And this is where Ron introduces the concept of limited association. You don't have to dramatically cut them out of your life forever, but you limit the exposure.
Limit the dose.
Exactly. You spend minutes with them, not hours. You don't join an easy crowd because you won't grow. You control the dosage of that negativity.
And on the flip side of that,
expanded association. You have to actively find people who are playing the game of life at a much higher level than you and get around them. And look, even if you can't meet them in person, it can just be reading their books or listening to them. Ron had a great line for this. Pity the man who has a favorite restaurant but not a favorite thinker.
Ouch. That stings a little bit.
It's meant to sting. You need to feed your mind just as intentionally as you feed your physical body. Spend more time with people of substance.
As we start to wrap this up,
Mm-hmm.
I'm struck by how heavy some of this feels. It's incredibly empowering, yes,
Yeah.
but it puts a massive amount of weight on the individual. There is literally nowhere to hide in Ron's philosophy.
There really isn't. And Ron fully acknowledges that weight. He says that life essentially comes down to a fundamental choice between two pains.
The two pains.
He says we must all suffer one of two things, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret.
And the difference between them is the weight.
Exactly. Discipline weighs ounces. Regret weighs tons.
That is the image I want to leave everyone with today.
Yeah.
The pain of discipline, like writing in that journal tonight when you're tired, or forcing yourself to save that 10%, or biting your tongue when you really want to complain about your boss. It feels heavy in the moment. It's annoying.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
But it's an ounce.
But the regret of getting to the end of the year or the end of the decade and realizing you haven't moved an inch, that is a crushing weight. That's the tons.
And that perfectly leads to Ron's final challenge to us. He loved to compare humans to nature. He said, look at a tree. A tree will grow as tall as it possibly can. It drives its roots as deep as it can.
It maximizes itself. Right. It doesn't grow halfway up and say, hey, I'm good, this is tall enough. Biology forces it to maximize its absolute potential.
But humans have a choice.
We have the dignity of choice. You can choose to be all, or you can choose to be less. You can choose to grow, or you can consciously choose to shrink.
So the question he leaves you with, the listener, is why not? Why not see how much you can actually do? Why not stretch to the full measure of the challenge? Why not see how many skills you can learn and what kind of person you can become?
Why not you? And why not now?
If you want to start that journey tonight, maybe go buy yourself a $26 journal. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.